We'll now go to Mr. Zimmer for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Minister, for coming. And just in following up with the questions I said I would ask you just before the committee, I'll start off with this. Are you committed to working with our angling community, yes or no?
Yes.
Awesome. So this is a letter from the Public Fishery Alliance dated to you on February 2nd, 2022, asking for a Chinook retention opportunity in areas of 28, 17, 18, and 19 in BC. The letter asks, we are asking that your department works with the public fishery representatives via the SFAB process and local SFAC chairs to develop fishing plans that permit much-needed public access to Chinook in the spring of 2022. This is when stocks of concern from the Fraser stocks identified as small stream stocks of concern are not present due to their summer and fall run timings. During the same time period, hatchery-marked Chinook are prevalent in the millions, Minister. The risk to threatened stocks is proven simply to not be there. Will you open a limited fishery for April 1st to May 31st, 2022 as requested?
Well, thanks for that question. And first I want to say that as a coastal British Columbian, I know how important the recreational fishery is, and it's multiple times the value per fish, in fact, than some of the commercial harvests. And we currently do have a Mark Selective Fishery, a limited set of availabilities,
Minister,
which is open until the end of May.
Can I just clarify that specific question is for those areas? They're asking if there's going to be an opening for that time period. Can you just answer that one specifically?
I'll ask my officials to answer about specific areas, Mr. Zimmer, but we do have an opening that is until the end of May.
Okay, my time's very limited with you here, so I'll follow through with that with them after.
Thank you.
But if you could refer to that letter and ask and really look to what they're requesting. They've been shut out of the fishery for the last couple of years, even though there's been hundreds of millions of marked fish coming up from Washington State that are there to catch, 110 million to be exact. So the opportunities are there. We're just asking you. We asked the previous minister, who's no longer here, we asked her for those same opportunities, and she wouldn't listen. So we're asking that, hopefully, to have a more hearing ear from you as a British Columbian. But I'll move on to my next question, and this is to speak about what you had talked about, a Mark Selective Fishery. And it's being established in BC. And you talked about there is one. But I'm going to ask a specific question from Chris Boss of the South Vancouver Island Anglers Coalition. The whole topic moving forward, and this is more of a long-term solution to the problem of a risk of salmon stocks that are at risk. The whole topic of moving forward with the transition to a Mark Selective Chinook and coho fishing is probably the most important to the long-term survival to the public salmon fishery in BC. Marking all the hatcheries, Chinook and coho, must start as soon as possible, as it will take several years before those clipped juvenile fish will come back as marked adults to the fishery. In some, 3 to 5 years, that's the turnaround, even if we get started today, Minister. The BC government has said, get going on Mark Selective Fishery. 25 members of Parliament from all parties, that my colleague Mel Arnold, we all signed that letter asking for a Mark Selective Fishery. The Cohen Commission, I have it here, Recommendation 30, calls on the Department of Fisheries and Oceans to establish a Mark Selective Fishery. When are we actually going to see that happen, Minister?
Well, thank you for that question. We're going to see some results of our study of the pilots on Mark Selective Fishery, because the reality is, while this is something that has been asked for, yes, it also can have detrimental effects on very, very vulnerable Chinook stock because of the mortality levels of the wild salmon that are caught during a Mark Selective Fishery. So we do need to be very careful how this is applied, and we are doing the research now on what the experimental or the pilot Mark Selective Fishery is telling us in terms of whether it conserves or it creates extra pressure on the vulnerable stock.
Because we've actually had evidence that I produced for last Parliament to say that the fish mortality rates of even caught fish is very low. The mortality rate is extremely low. But you talk about a pilot program running in BC now. Can you give us more details what that actually looks like? Because I know a lot of the angling community in BC don't have any idea of what this pilot program is. And I would suggest these should be folks that are actually, they're the ones that are the conservationists that are on the river, that have hip waders on the weekends picking up garbage. They're the ones that should be part of this pilot program. And I'm a little concerned that they're not being part of it. So maybe explain what that looks like.
Well, thanks for that question. And we do consult with stakeholders and Indigenous communities and everything that we do as a ministry. The very vulnerable Chinook stocks have about a 20% mortality when they are fished in a Mark Selective Fishery. So we need to think about where are we having the Mark Selective Fisheries, at what times, so there is not an interception of the wild stock that is
when they're in
frail
holding
to be
pens,
fished.
survivability goes way up. But anyway, thank you, Minister, for your time.